Hello everybody, my name is Sergi. I'm a guy that plays games while being lame, and I came across a video called Why Dark Pals, the First Floor is Everything Wrong with Mascot Horror. But I'm here to explain that that's not the case. This video is everything wrong with criticism when it comes to games. Not only do we have a bunch of irrelevancy, but as always, and something that I see online is, my opinion, therefore a criticism. It's pretty bad, and I wish stuff like this would stop. Obviously, no hate for him, no hate to anybody. This is just meant to criticize things as we're all here on the internet. Do not go and harass anybody. And also, disclaimer, this is protected under fair use. Anyway, let's get on to the video. I'm going to go try to make this as short as possible and simplify his points. Obviously, he explains it a little bit more in depth, and I don't want to strawman him, but for the sake of brevity, because they're pretty simple, let's start off with the first point. The first point is, why am I even here? He states this.
To start things off, I should probably attempt to explain to you what happens in this game. Thankfully, this won't take long because this game has no plot, or at least no plot other than exactly what you think is happening. Upon pressing start, we find ourselves in an elevator going down, the doors open, and yes, less than 10 seconds into this game, we've already stumbled upon the first item for our list of grudges: lack of character motivation. Mascot Horror has become rather lazy in terms of establishing character motivation, and Bark Boy's flatulence floor is probably the best example of that fact. You see, the reason our character has arrived in this dirty place is because... Hey, you trailed off there, cheese. Oh!
I'm a little bit confused about this criticism because it generally doesn't make any sense. It's one of those things that may sound smart on paper, but when in actuality, when you look at some of the greatest games of all time, they have a very bare bones story. Doom, there's pretty much nothing there. You're like, at least the original Doom, there was nothing there. I find this extremely odd when it comes to like trying to use it as a criticism because it generally doesn't mean much. He tries to say that it'll create things later on, problems, but it really won't. Doom is one of the greatest examples. They didn't add any character motivation, and then later on in the reboot, they expanded upon it. But in the first two games, there was pretty much nothing to it. Trying to act like we need character motivation for something is kind of not the greatest. And the problem that I have is that he brings up this example of Lord of the Rings.
To demonstrate, imagine this was Frodo's motivation in Lord of the Rings.
Frodo, take this ring and throw it into Mount Doom.
But why Gandalf?
Because it is evil.
Oh. How?
I cannot tell you anymore.
Why?
Because otherwise the story wouldn't be vague enough. Now go! Embark on your confusing journey and get that game theory video!
The problem with that is that that's just a false equivalence. When you're trying to compare a movie to a game, those two media are so far removed that the same tactics that you use in game design aren't going to be the same that you use in movies. Like, I brought this up, and I'll bring it up once again. Doom, the original Doom, doesn't really have much of a character motivation besides the demons are here, go kill. Which coincidentally is extremely similar to Dark Pals. He tries to say that it's lazy and that it's like not really that interesting, but that's just his personal opinion. And if he tried to use that as like, I personally don't like that, that's fair, but he's not trying to do that. He's trying to use it as actual criticism, which you're going to need a little bit more than I personally don't like that. To that, I say, whatever, that's not really that great. But that's pretty much the entire point. It's they say something that's not correct and they try to say, well, it'll cause problems and therefore it's a criticism. But when you look in actuality, characters not having motivations is just a thing that happens in games. Like, you don't need it. It's welcomed and it can make things better, and you can think that it's lazy or whatever, but that's a personal opinion and that's not an actual criticism. That's a pet peeve. Those are two different things, and this is why I say that this video is a great example of the degradation of criticism, just like he tries to state that this is the degradation of Mascot Horror. Like, and he really doesn't even try to hide it, that it's just like a bunch of opinions and pet peeves which don't reach the standard of what a good criticism is. He just straight up like shows it right here where he gets mad at a trope.
Is legit the most tilted I have ever been across both of my channels. And there's no plot either. There's literally no plot other than we're experimenting on kids. Bet you never seen that before. God! Sorry, I'm just frustrated.
So while the first point was kind of meh, and you could say, well, there's ways to improve upon it, which I think that he can. Obviously opinions are the starting points of criticism. You can't really say that for the next point, and where he talks about certain things of other games, but completely misses entire things that make them different. That is the horror decor.
Here's a fun test. Take your favorite horror game. Now remove all the monsters. Is the environment still scary? If yes, congratulations, that's good game design. If not, you get Dark Pals, the first fool for buying this trash.
Making a scary background is actually hard because when you take a lot of monsters out of a lot of horror games, you don't really get a scary area. Most of the times you get grimdark, which is like Warhammer-esque things. If you were to say that you took all the monsters out of, let's say, Warhammer Fantasy or Vermintide, you would get areas very similar to horror games. But that's the thing. You would get areas very similar to horror games. Scary is not really a good test. Whether or not it fits the vision is a better test of whether or not it is good game design, and how they use the areas is a better way. Which is odd because he directly says that later on, but then also miss a bunch of other mechanics that make it to where it's extremely different.
Demonstrate, I'm going to take several shots from several areas in this game, and then I'm going to ask you a question. What is inherently scary about what we're looking at? What about this place is supposed to invoke fear?
And I can easily answer that with, my background. It's alone. It's very similar to the idea of liminal spaces. Something feels wrong here. You look at it and it's vibrant and it's colorful, but you go, what actually happened here? It's not just, oh, it's a broken down building, as he tries to say later, but there's something that isn't right here. This is why the Backrooms is able to use itself as horror, because it's something odd. It's not really that scary, but you remove the monster, and if you were to put yourself in there and walk around, you'd be like, what is going on? I don't like this. That feeling of alone but not alone is what is there. Even in bright, colorful things, you would still be able to get that. Now, you could argue whether or not it does that well, but trying to argue saying what is actually scary about this just really goes to show that certain pieces, when it comes to this criticism, is just missing completely. As I stated before, environments alone are not going to be scary. There's too many different types, and even the scariest of environments are going to be kind of whatever, because it's dependent on the gameplay and how you use it, which Dark Palace actually does. When you go and you explore, the first things that you actually encounter is a POW, that being the big-headed dog. That being the big-headed POW. And what they do well is that when you play it the first time, they do suspense well. They keep giving you glimpses of this, and you don't know whether or not it's going to attack. You don't know when there's going to be a chase. Now, that may be a problem when it comes to replayability, and I don't think the horror games necessarily need to have that, but it does it well. It uses the environment, and then it also uses the characters to make it seem not necessarily super scary, but enough to bring tension to you to where you're like, oh, something might just pop out any moment. I have played many horror games as well, and Dark Palace is actually really refreshing when it comes to tension. The area may seem vibrant, but because you don't know what area is actually safe, because everything feels safe, you may just randomly hear music and you go, huh? And then you see something charging at you and you're like, what?
That's not to say a colorful environment can't be scary, it's just more difficult than, for example, a spooky haunted castle or a deteriorating underwater base. For example, My Friendly Neighborhood does a great job of this. By using harsh shadows, cramped halls, unnerving ambience, there are plenty of areas that feel threatening. But
What's odd is that point doesn't actually help him because he shows video footage of there being monsters involved. I don't know why he would say, oh yes, it uses this, but let me use stuff where it has the actual monsters in it. Another thing that he also doesn't talk about is that it uses doors to go and section off places so you don't know what's coming next. So it isn't just like, oh, well, there's things in the dark. It's, hey, there's things in the dark. Also, you don't know anything. That's one of the biggest things when it comes to that game, is that it's not just like harsh shadows. And what's odd is that most of the game doesn't actually do that. It's, you don't know what's going to come next. Another thing that he leaves out is that that's only for like the beginning part of the game until you start getting your weapons and you don't really care as much. Obviously there's ammo management, but it's like saying that, the modern day like Resident Evils, which are more like gun like games with slight horror, are scary. There's scary parts, but it's not necessarily that much. This is probably one of the weaker arguments out there.
video telling the employees how to apply restraints and beatings at children who are getting out of line, followed by another tongue-in-cheek video where, and you're never gonna see this one coming, we learn that the children are going to be subject to horrible experiments, and this is another problem I have with modern mascot horror.
You never see it.
Lack of subtlety, once again, is more of a personal preference than rather an actual criticism or something that's a problem within a genre. It's going to be what you want. Let's say Warhammer 40k. Warhammer 40k, I would actually say, has a lot of parallels to Dark Pals, where it takes itself so seriously that it's so seriously silly. But there's no subtlety with it. Some of the characters are literally just straight up puns that are ripped names from other people. Like the Dark Angels is Lionel, which is a dude that wrote the Dark Angels and was a homosexual. And guess what? That homosexual nature he was trying to hide from people because he may have been looked at differently from society. You want to know what happens? The dude named Lionel, the guy that has the Dark Angels, he wants to hide the people that abandoned them and turned to chaos, and that's his burden, and he doesn't want society to know it. Not that subtle. If he wanted to express his opinion, that's great. I don't have a problem with that. If you think that it's stupid and you say that that's bad, fair enough, right? But don't try to make it with the claim of this is what is wrong with stuff, because it's not.
Let's turn the clock back to the first Five Nights at Freddy's game. Sure, by the end, it was pretty obvious that the 5 missing kids were now piloting their own scary, smelly furry mechas, but you know how that story was told?
Very, very slowly.
Never stating it outright, and by letting the player piece it all together. So now let's take that original FNAF story and run it through the level of writing we see in Dark Pals and, to be frank, most mascot horror these days.
Hey there, welcome to Fazbear Inc., where we know you'll find a job for the rest of your life. Hope you enjoy your stay, but just one piece of advice. Don't look in the animatronic suits. For one, you're not qualified, and two, there's a bit of a company secret inside. We assure you it has nothing to do with a missing children incident, and don't mind the smell either. We promise, there is absolutely nothing horrifying inside. Now get out there and make a killing. In profits. Yeah, that is literally the level of writing we see here, and it started because it immediately kills any possible mystery or suspense. We immediately know everything about the plot. There's nothing to make us wonder. It's just, well, this place is torturing kids. Glad we got that out of the way.
What he literally showed is literally what I said of what you want from a story. One can be tongue-in-cheek and just be like, here, I'm going to play my hand right here, and you could like that or not. It's obviously that Dark Pals is trying to take itself seriously enough to be, you know, a franchise, but also not seriously enough to where it's trying to be something. It's going to be dependent on what you want, and that alone is not enough. Once again, like, if you took all his criticism so far, Warhammer 40k, ooh, that would be the worst written thing in existence, but nobody would say that because it takes itself seriously, but it also knows when to not take itself seriously. Now, I agree with his thing of linear chases, which is his next point. I think that they're so overdone, and I think that there is a time and place to have that. It's just that Dark Pals doesn't necessarily do that all that great. The reason that I bring that up is to showcase that his reason for lack of subtlety as a criticism may not be all that correct, because there is subtle things that allow you to understand the game in which you may think, why is that the case? He brings up this point with the dog.
Dog is now for some reason friendly to us. I say for some reason because I legitimately don't understand why pressing his teeth in this order does that. If we had taken something out of his mouth, that'd make sense, but you know what? I forgot what game I was playing.
It's actually pretty easy to answer. You are a child within this facility. It's actually subtle within the game, but you can see certain things as hairs for a normal adult are way bigger than you. You have a toy. You're shorter than a lot of things. You can ride children's rides. All these things make it to where you are more than likely a child. This goes into the lore about Chompy that you would have to read these small little things, and if you read, Chompy is the guardian of the children. This relates back to the video of the brainwashing where they use the obey, consume, whatever, and when you did that, you know, being the size that you are and doing that, you know, and he knows the things that they were teaching the children. Adults would have probably not known that or have not remembered it, where it's like, oh yeah, that's just for the children, and maybe only the projectionist would know. But besides that, this is a specifically child thing where pressing it in this order is like, well, you're a child. If you're a child to him, he's going to protect you. And that's also why he goes after Binky later on, because he's the guardian of the children. The reason why I go so deep into this is to show that there are mysteries, there are things where it's like subtle, where if you look at it, you can be like, oh, that's why, yeah. So when he tries to say that it's not subtle, it's not exactly that correct. And you can see that how certain things slip past, even though that these things are set up within the story.
Regardless of how you feel about these monsters' designs, this game, along with most other mascot horror games, don't take real advantage of how creative and crazy their designs are allowed to be, especially given that mascot horror typically leans towards the more fantastic these days. For both Block Teeth Bob and Baby Bottletop, the game just drops these Fisher-Price babies first horror monsters in front of you and shouts, "Here they are, the monsters, be sure to get a really long look at them so you can recognize our brand." In other words, this doesn't feel like they're introducing a scary monster that's going to stalk us. It feels like advertising, just like I do when I show you my cheesy merch, shirts, mugs, all made locally by a friend I know in real life. Go take a look at her Etsy store in the description. Look, there's nothing inherently wrong with merchandising, I just take issue with the entire game space around it. But getting back on track, there's a reason practically every single horror game, movie, book, and campfire story keeps their monsters hidden or obscured before the big reveal. Because, to quote Carmine Falcone from Batman Begins, what you don't know is always scarier than what you do know. And it's a shame, too, because a lot of mascot horror designs can have some really fun ways to tease at what they are. And there's no better...
Well, I agree that a lot of mascot horror does not actually do like certain character designs justice, especially with some of the more fantastical ones where it's like you have pretty much an actual dragon. What the hell are you doing? The idea that you should keep your monster hidden is only one of the major philosophies when you have a game. That works more for things like books and TV shows and movies and stuff like that. But when it comes to a game, you actually can go and take a lot of liberties of being like, look at our monster. Yeah, that's your threat. This is why I will always say that you cannot treat a game like a movie or a book. When you start making parallels to them, you start losing the plot and you start just making absolute gobbledygook arguments. The reason why games are able to go and say and basically show you their monsters is because there's other ways to use them. Well, I would love to go and agree with like his point. The problem is that he doesn't actually get to a good point in his video. It's pretty much just the usage of monsters of hiding them and But you don't need to just take my word for it. Let's actually bring up an example. If I'm creating a game where I'm constantly showing you the enemy over and over and over again, let's say it's a zombie, that's not going to be scary. But when I design it into where it's old, decrepit, and they're just kind of around, you're now going to be a little bit more wary. Instead of just being wary, I'm going to have it to where if you make mistakes and make noise, one zombie can alert hundreds of them. Where it doesn't matter how much ammo you have, how much armor you have, you better be careful. So then this puts the pressure on you, leading to tension and leading to a thing of, ooh, I gotta leave because there's 20 zombies here, I don't have enough ammo, etc., etc. There's other things that you can help with that, but saying that, this is how you use a monster and it's better that way is not always the case. The problem is that he's treating it just like books and movies, but it's not just books and movies. This thing actually has interactivity. I'll cut off my criticisms right here because the last 2 points I do agree with and have minor criticisms where they don't really mean much. But the problem that I have is that I think that this video really does show the problem with criticisms when being made by personal pet peeves or opinions. You don't really get much. You say a lot of incorrect things or things that are not exactly to the full extent to give you the full picture, in which you can start pointing out things and see the cracks in a lot of his arguments. The biggest one is a lot of it is just personal preference, where it's very clear that he wants a more dark, gritty, story-driven, lore-focused game. While you can have that with mascot horror, I don't necessarily think that you need that, and games before have shown that other categories and other genres of games don't need that. It may be wanted, it may make it better, but it's not necessary, and that's not a fault, and that's not something to really criticize it. It's like saying, oh, well, I like my sandwich with mayonnaise versus not having mayonnaise. Some people are going to like it, some people are not, but that's not necessarily a criticism against a sandwich that doesn't have it. Does it still taste good? Good? Okay, yes. Using opinions and pet peeves are never really going to be that great, and I think that this is something that we have too common when we see like essay videos or criticisms of certain things, and you're just sitting there and listening and going, one problem, two problem, three problem, and it's just very disappointing. I thought that this video would have had better substance because you have 3 really good points that are pretty solid, but the 4 fall flat on their face. And so I shall end this video off right here. I'll see you guys in the next video. I think that if he were to go back here and rewrite certain things, I think it would be way better because it seems very clear that he's leading with nothing but emotion rather than actually looking at the game and trying to analyze it. But I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye bye.